For a while now, I've been chasing some of the hardest challenges I could find, and let's just say a lot of those hunts ended in complete disasters. Back in my 12x challenge video I did a while ago, I asked you guys to leave 2000 likes so I would attempt the minigames on 12x as well. You guys did absolutely crush the like goal, but the video never came. Why? Well, to tell the truth, the challenge was way harder than I ever expected. At the time, I simply wasn't ready for it. But since then, I've learned and gotten a lot better at the game. So today, I'm here to finally redeem myself. I'm going to attempt every single minigame, but with zombies having 20 times more health. Before we start, a lot of you guys asked about the dog I used in my 20x adventure video. I've left a link in the description. It includes all the world records and discoveries made by the X Health community. The reason I didn't share it last time was because it originally had a download link to the mod, which goes against YouTube's terms of services since it promotes piracy. But Exa has since then removed the download link, so now I can safely share the full talk with you guys. We're starting off with the first minigame, Zombotany. This one introduces two new zombie types, the pea-shooter zombie as well as the walnut zombie. Pea-shooter zombies have the exact same health as regular zombies, meaning they go down with just 3 explosions, or just 2 explosions plus literally any damage source. Walnut zombies on the other hand are much stronger. They can survive up to 15 explosives, making them even stronger than buckethead zombies. On top of that, they don't share the same weakness to magnet rooms. That said, we can take advantage of garlic to redirect pea-shooter zombies into lanes protected by tall nuts. This will reduce the pressure from their long range attacks. Just keep in mind that your garlics will take a lot more damage than usual since it's tanking all the pea-shooter hits, so you'll need to replace them a lot more frequently. By using our gloom transformation from the X20 adventure video, it becomes pretty easy to handle the Zombotany swarm. Overall, as you can see, this level wasn't really too difficult, as this was already beaten by the X Health community on infinite health zombies, so let's just move forward. The next minigame on the other hand is easily one of the worst levels in this entire challenge. In fact, it's part of the reason I never finished a 12x video back in the day. You can immediately see why. The spawn rate is massively ramped up, even though this is just a 2-flag level. Our walnuts can barely deal any damage to the swarms of zombies, and even with the conveyor belt manipulation trick I've used in my 20x video, we still cannot kill everything fast enough. The zombies simply outspawn our maximum possible DPS. For reference, buckethead zombies need 15 explosions to go down, which translates to 15 exploder nuts as well, given their damage is identical. And unfortunately, the conveyor belt just doesn't give us plants quickly enough to keep up with the necessary minimum required DPS, even when forcing only exploder nuts to appear. Since this is a conveyor belt level, we don't really have many options. So what do we do now? Well, luckily the Plants vs Zombies community has discovered a trick, or to be more precise, a glitch that we can exploit in Walnut Bowling. Yes, PvZ has actual exploits now, and this one relies on memory manipulation. I'll leave a link in the description to Aaron's full breakdown if you want the technical details, but to simplify, by closing the game we can reset the reanimation IDs. We must memorize and repeat the same number of flowers appearing in the start screen. After killing the actual flag zombie that spawns in wave 10, we can then reset the reanimation IDs before his flag reanimation disappears by closing out of our game again. When entering back to our game, we have to immediately pause the game when entering before the flag despawns to advance the animation array by 1 slot. And when doing everything correctly, the walnut we left on the lawn will be removed for this reanimation, which causes some strange properties in this minigame. Instead of moving forward, it completely loses its horizontal velocity, but weirdly enough it still keeps its vertical velocity. The result is a walnut that bounces up and down, giving us free DPS for our setup. This was a massive help and exactly what we needed, and thank you a lot JChim for pointing me out towards this exploit. That being said, even with this insanely overpowered trick, the zombies at 20 times more health are way out of our league still. Coneheads and bucketheads in particular just overwhelm us too often, so as much as it pains me to do, I had to manipulate the RNG of the zombie spawn seed to cut down the number of coneheads and buckethead zombies drastically, since I really didn't see any other way of beating this level unfortunately. For what it's worth, the world record uses the same RNG manipulation at 17x, though in a much more extreme way, by forcing only basic zombies to spawn. This whole minigame is just a great example of how badly designed conveyor belt levels are for this challenge. Between the boosted zombie spawns, the heavy reliance on RNG, and even the limitations of which plants the conveyor belt can give us, our odds are naturally just rigged from the start. With that out of the way, let's just move on to the next stage. The next minigame will be Slot Machine, and funnily enough, this was the first minigame I've ever beaten, since I needed the extra money when playing the adventure mode to buy my roof cleaners. As you'd expect, defeating zombies here is extremely difficult with not enough RNG, specifically by getting plenty of sunflowers, walnuts and snow peas. It's easily possible to beat this level without having to ever kill a single zombie. This becomes even more obvious when you realize that the world record has been able to beat this level with infinite HP zombies and with not using any tools. Next up is its Raining Seeds, which honestly is the definition of pure RNG garbage. I've never liked levels that take away skill in favor with just strict RNG, and in this level that problem only gets worse. I've played this level countless times, and no matter what I've tried, I just couldn't consistently get lucky enough to get enough Hypnoshrooms, Zomboss or Tanglecarps on time to reach the end of this level, since this level also had 4 flags. What's funny is that Exa has already beaten this level on Infinite Health Zombies. I'll leave a link to his video in the description, but strangely enough, it's actually way easier to beat this level with Infinite Health rather than 20x, since Hypnoshrooms can turn enemies into essentially infinite walnuts. Now, the level is still possible on 20x, but it's extremely RNG dependent and it doesn't really reward any skill. That's why I ended up using my same conveyor belt manipulation trick from earlier to force determine some of my random seeds that fall from the sky. If you want to try this for yourself, then you can simply save scum a specific portion of the level until you get the desired seed pick you need. Next up is Beghouled, which turned out to be very easy and honestly not much of a challenge. I mean sure, zombies take a lot longer to die, but you can easily outrace them for the trophy, especially with snow peas. The only real tip worth mentioning here is to spend all your sun on repairing lost tiles rather than upgrading plants, since against 20x zombies the upgrades tend to not do too much anyway, so keeping your board intact is far more important. Next up, without a doubt, is the dumbest minigame in this entire challenge. Literally, even the dog agrees with me here. Okay, we need a quick recap. The only plants we get are pea shooters, kernel pulls, squash, walnuts and ice shrooms. With that lineup, we're somehow expected to defend against conets, bucketheads, dolphin riders and even zambonis, all by not being able to see the zombies approaching. Yeah, it's just awful. So awful in fact that World Rocket without tools has only beaten this level at 2x. But the tools used in the World Rocket are changing the RNG of this level to the extreme, to a point where the density is very low, since I assume they spawn maximum buckethead zombies, which take away spawn points from the wave, and maximum jack-in-the-box zombies, which not only spawn extremely frequent here, but they also explode very early so they can take out your plants, and also kernel pull shooting butter 100% of the time. I wanted to beat this with as little RNG manipulation as possible, but no matter how many times I tried, I just couldn't even come close enough. To even stand a chance, I also had to force kernel pulls to always shoot butter, like the World Rocket, while also using the same conveyor belt manipulation from before. I was okay with infinite butters since it's technically achievable through save scumming without ever using any external tools, though it would take you forever if you don't use any tools. But even with infinite butter, the zombie density was still too high. My walnuts always got eaten by the overwhelming swarms of invisible zombies, and to fix that, I had to do 2 things. First, I used PvZ tools to choose a zombie seed with the least amount of basic zombies, so it's reducing the overall pressure for my walnuts. And secondly, I had to try to invent a new setup to beat this level. After spending a whole day brainstorming, I came up with this idea. Place 2 walnuts and 2 kernel pulls in the same lane to double our butter stalling potential. The tricky part was making sure the kernel pulls actually targeted the right zombies. If you just drop a walnut in front of a zombie and then plant a kernel pull in front of it, it will usually aim behind the walnut instead of in front, which removes the whole purpose of our setup to begin with, since we don't want the same zombie to be stalled twice with butter. The solution was to wait until the zombie walked into the center of the tile, then place a walnut on top of it so the kernel pull prioritizes targeting zombies in front. The biggest problem of course is that we can't actually see the zombies in this minigame. The only way to manage it was through ice shrooms, save scummings and a lot of careful timing. But after tons of trial and error, the strategy finally worked and we were just barely able to beat this horrendous level. So with that, I guess we can just move forward. Next is Seeing Stars, which might look intimidating at first, but it's actually very easy to beat. With all the stalling tools we now have at our disposal, like walnuts, tall nuts, ice shrooms, garlics and even mushrooms, I was able to beat this level on my very first attempt. At its core, this minigame really is just a race to get your starfruit setup down in place before the zombies start to overwhelm you. Zombiquarium, on the other hand, was pretty funny. It's actually the only minigame in this challenge that worked in my favor, since this time we're playing as the zombies. The extra health translated into snorkel zombies taking forever to starve, which was honestly hilarious to see. Overall, it was a nice change of pace and a much needed break in the middle of all these terrible levels. Next up is Beghouled Twist, which was just as easy as the original Beghouled minigame, if not even easier. Unlike the regular version, you don't have to think anymore about matching the pairs, since we can just spam click the plans to eventually get matches by accident. Not much to say here about this one, so let's move on again. Big Trouble Little Zombie was also very easy. In this minigame, zombies have 4 times less health, which in this challenge actually makes things exponentially easier. On top of that, getting cherry bombs and walnuts gives us plenty of free control, so the level never really feels too threatening. The only real difference compared to its adventure counterpart is that we now have to survive 3 flags instead of 2, but it doesn't really matter too much here. Portal combat, on the other hand, was devastating. And yes, you guessed it right, it's yet another conveyor belt level. While having access to cherry bombs, which is a good start, the real challenge comes from dealing with teleporting zombies, which are brutally difficult in this format. At first, I tried a Torchwood repeater walnut setup, which was inspired by the world record run, but I quickly realized that setup relied on extreme zombie spawn manipulation, where only basic zombies appeared, as well as Portal RNG manipulation, which I didn't use at all in my solution. I eventually switched to a cactus walnut cherry bomb setup, using my conveyor belt manipulation from earlier to stack up as many cherry bombs as I can. Cactus turned out to be really useful here. Not only does it pop balloon zombies, but it also deals exactly 1 damage to basic zombies, meaning just 2 explosives are enough to finish them off. Because of the brutal nature of this level, I saw myself forced to unfortunately force manipulate my zombie seed into a bunch of basic zombies as well as balloon zombies, since conehead zombies and buckethead zombies as well as football zombies just seemed almost unbeatable in here. While this is in theory possible to have a zombie seed that exclusively prioritizes basic zombie spawns over any other zombie type, you'll later learn why I despise this technique and why I only try to ever use it when I have no options left. Columns like you see him was equally as bad. If you've ever played this minigame, you'll probably remember the insane spawn rate, the super slow conveyor belt speed, as well as the ridiculous zombies that spawn at this level. Jalapenos help a lot here, since they're basically a full-on board wipe, but even then, taking down Gargantuars is a nightmare. They require 34 explosives, and with the conveyor belt moving this slowly, you're constantly behind. When I saw the world record beat this in infinite HP, I had to check it out, and well, for some reason it just spawned a trillion Yeti zombies. My best guess is that there's technically an astronomically low chance for that outcome to appear, for whatever reason, but obviously I couldn't rely on it. Instead, I had to force my zombie seed towards mostly basic zombies again, but the problem is that Gargantuars are hard-coded to spawn at the start of Flag 2, so stacking jalapenos at the end of my conveyor belt didn't really work. To adapt, I started using flower pots to stall the Gargantuars long enough for the lawnmowers to clear them out just barely on time. This then lets me exploit the lawnmower no spawn rule before the final 2 waves hit. Luckily, the zombie spawn speed in this minigame is much faster than usual, which allows me to use this approach. Another detail that is worth mentioning is that the first few plants on the conveyor belt are hard-coded and will always appear in the same order. I ended up saving my magnetrumes at the very end, since dying to ladder zombies, which are also forcibly spawned in here, was a constant problem. Bobsled Bonanza was yet another interesting one. It's the first minigame where I had to make an exception to. If you saw my 20x adventure video, you'll remember that I banned myself from using spikeweeds, since I bypassed the increased health gimmick. However, the X12 world record dog only bans Hypnoshroom and Chompers officially, and in this case, without spikeweeds, the level would literally just become impossible. Unbanning spikeweeds solved one problem, but I still had to deal with the bobsled teams themselves, as well as some basic zombies here and there. Because the ice trail spawn messed up my placements, I couldn't really rely on my standard Gloomshroom setup, so instead I opted to use a Cop Cannon strategy now. The idea was to pair up the Cop Cannon explosion with the extra run damage from spikeweeds so that only 2 Cop Cannon shots would be enough to finish off the zombies. Zombie Nibble Zombie Quick was extremely nerve-wracking and difficult to manage, but just like in the previous levels, the Garlic Gloom Ice Shroom setup was enough to handle this well. One important detail is to always use 2 Garlics per lane, since Paw Volters and Dolphin Zombies show up in this level and they can bypass your first Garlic. Looking back, I should have probably placed my Garlics 1 tile further in the pool lane, because Ambush Zombies are able to spawn in columns 5 through 9. From what I can tell, Whacker Zombies pretty much unchanged from its adventure counterpart. Conehead Zombies take 10 hammer hits to die, while Buckethead Zombies need 28 whacks. Nothing else really changes here, so let's just move on. Okay, Last Stand was another candidate for the worst level of this entire video. This minigame has the highest spawn density outside of survival, and to make things even worse, you have to survive for 5 entire flags. Nothing I tried even came close to beating it, until I checked the dog and thankfully found an exploit that makes this otherwise impossible level doable. It's called the Potato Skip bug, first discovered by a Chinese glitch hunter on Bilibili. I'll leave access full explanation in the description, but to simplify, by leaving the game before and after placing a Cop Cannon, you can trick the game's memory into thinking that the imitated potato mine while transforming is actually the Cop Cannon, by switching around the plant IDs. If you then click the Cop while it's being eaten, the game binds the Cop Cannon's attack code to the potato mine, because the game thinks it's a Cop Cannon. What happens next is bizarre. The potato mine launches the Cop Cannon shooting code, which triggers a random P from shooting out of the potato mine exactly once. It then becomes completely invincible to zombies, since it's entering a different Cop Cannon stage. This property isn't unique to Potato Skip though. This is shared by most explosive plants as well as insta-use plants like squash, which is the same reason why squash can never be eaten, no matter how many zombies are eating it at a tile. With potato mine, you can never see it happen in a game because it always explodes once a zombie gets near it, but you can observe this property in many PvZ1 mods where zombies have an increased eating range. The drawback of this glitch is that it's fairly expensive since it requires you to lose a whole carb cannon, but by doing it twice and redirecting zombies into the potato skip lanes with garlics, I was eventually able to kill every single zombie with a single fume shroom. Yes, a single fume shroom can theoretically beat the entire level as long as zombies have a finite amount of health. For the water lanes, since we obviously couldn't use any potato mines in here, I had to make an exception to also unban the previous banned Tangle Kelp, since the X-Health community dog allows it too, and since it was the only way to make this level even possible from what I can tell. Tall nuts were also very important here, especially near the end, to buy us just enough time for the last zombies to be taken out by Tangle Kelps. However, even with the glitch, the level is still brutally RNG heavy. Jack-in-the-Box zombies can ruin everything if they blow up your potato skip, as well as too many water spawns can just drain your Tangle Kelps and sun too quickly, and even too many basic zombies can chew through your garlics too fast. Because the sun is so tight here, we don't have the luxury to constantly repair our garlics at all. Instead, you'll need to let them be completely eaten and then replace them to maximize their value to the fullest. And you'll be able to see at the very end just how close my sound counter was to approaching the 0 mark. Zombotany 2, in contrast, was surprisingly easy. The only real threat comes from jalapeno zombies, which can easily wipe out an entire lane, but garlics can fix that problem by redirecting them into the non-gloomshroom lanes. Tall nut zombies are pretty funny here since they need 25 explosions to die, but they can be easily stalled out with ice shrooms and more importantly tall nuts. How ironic. You'd think walnut bowling 2 would be a nightmare since the first walnut bowling was practically impossible, but surprisingly, it's not. The giant walnut is so overpowered at clearing out a lane that I was able to beat this without any tools. Fun fact, the giant walnut isn't actually coded to instantly kill zombies, it just deals a ridiculous amount of damage per second. In base PvZ, you'll never notice it because zombies just die as quickly as any other insta-kill, but with 20x zombies stacked up in a lane can actually survive the giant walnut. As Dexter mentioned in the doc, the giant walnut deals exactly 180,000 damage per second, so if enough zombies are stacked up in a tile, they can collectively have more than 180,000 health in a second, which makes them sometimes survive the lane clear. Anyways, this level was so easy that I didn't even need to use my flying reanimation glitch. Pogo Party was yet another interesting one, but honestly not too difficult to solve either. By letting all 5 lawnmowers go at the very start, I was able to maximize my entire sun economy. Since basic zombies barely spawn here, I could get away with using a normal inefficient gloomshroom setup that focuses damage on the pogo zombies. Tall nuts stop them from jumping any further, and we can use pumpkins plus doomshrooms to handle the regular basic zombies that spawn throughout the level. Zomboss's revenge turned out to be surprisingly tough though. Even with the 2 exploits I covered back in my 20x adventure video, which are the lawnmower exploit and the lane 1 gargantua no spawn rule, and even while using my conveyor belt seed manipulator, it was brutally hard. Zomboss itself doesn't have 20 times more health because it wouldn't offer me too much here since this is all just pure RNG garbage and no skill. Even without the extra health, it took me a lot of attempts until I finally came close to beating it. The first 4 seed slots in your conveyor belts are hard-coded in a way that it will always give you 2 cabbage poles as well as a jalapeno and doomshroom. After that, we're just praying to God that we can 3-cycle Zomboss since all my attempts where he wasn't able to survive the first 3 cycles resulted into my game over. Since Zombot just gets stronger the more damage he takes, when very low, he'll just start spamming the hell out of me. Now, you might think this will be the end of the video, but I've decided to include most of the playable minigames from the hidden limbo page to complete the series. The first one is Art Challenge Walnut. Just like seeing stats from earlier, this wasn't very challenging. Walnuts are really great at stalling zombies, so it's a pretty straightforward win. The only restriction is that you can't place plants on tiles 2-5 and 2-7, since in this scrap minigame, the giant walnut was supposed to have 2 eye tiles here. Other than that, not too much to say here. Next up is Sunny Day, and the gimmick here is that sun drops gives you 50 sun instead of the usual 25. As you can imagine, it's nothing but an upside, so it comes to no surprise that this was very easily beaten with a classic gloomshroom setup. I used magnet shrooms as a means to counter Jack-in-the-Box zombies, but honestly, they were not necessary at all. Unsodded, on the other hand, is by far the most interesting minigame on the limbo page, and also the one that took me the longest to beat. The gimmick here is that you can't plant anything in lanes 1 and 5, and once wave 5 begins, zombies start spawning in those unsorted lanes. The problem becomes very obvious pretty quickly. Up to this point, we've always relied on some kind of wall plant to stall our 20x coneheads, but now that option is completely gone. I tried everything. Pure carb cannon setups, double doomshrooms, full gloomshroom builds, hybrid versions of all of them, and at some point even wintermelon strategies out of sheer desperation. Nothing worked. When I checked the world record, I noticed they were using the same basic zombie force manipulation from earlier, and I guess this is a good time to explain why I disliked this solution so much. To understand why, we have to actually run the numbers. I counted all the basic zombies that spawned in Unsodded, which came out to be 339 in total. The first 3 zombies are guaranteed since they're the only zombies with a spawn spawn weight of 1. After that, both basics and codenet share a spawn weight of 4000, which basically makes it a coin flip, with a simple 50% chance of either type spawning in the first 8 waves, on waves 3 to 8. From wave 9 onwards, bucketed zombies join the potential seed list, with a spawn weight of 3000, meaning the odds of rolling a basic zombie drop down to 4000 out of 11,000 each time. The problem is that if we raise the probability to the power of the next 331 remaining zombies, the chances become so small that GeoGebra literally gives us 0 as a result. I then had to switch over to Wolfram Alpha, and the result came out to be about 1.19 times 10 to the negative of 147, which is the exact same result that Google gives us as well. Now, that number by itself doesn't really give us any perspective, so let's flip it around and calculate it in terms of a 1 in x probability. Dividing 1 by 1.19 times 10 to the negative of 147 gives us roughly 8.39 times 10 to the power of 146. To further put that number into perspective, the total number of atoms in the observable universe is estimated to be around 10 to the power of 80. Even compared to that, our number is astronomically huge, about 8 times 39 times 10 to the power of 66 bigger, a number with 66 zeros, also called an unvinctillion. In other words, getting an all basic zombie speed in Unsodded is a 1 in all the atoms of 8.39 vinctillion parallel universes chance to happen. For all we are concerned, this number is effectively 0, so this is why I've tried everything in my power to avoid the all basic zombie spawn seed. By the way, if I've done my math wrong at any point, feel free to let me know in my comments below. My only realistic way was using carp cannons along with ice shrooms and doom shrooms, but with just 3 usable lanes and sunflowers stacked on top of carp cannons, the economy and space were extremely tight. That's when I realized I needed to exploit the potato skip glitch from earlier. By setting up potato skips at the front with garlics, I could free up enough space to finally build and spend enough resources to handle conehead zombies. Since they only require 7 carp cannon explosions to be defeated, I theory crafted a working solution on my drawing board, and it actually worked. The early game had to be very precise, and magnetrons were also necessary to turn bucketheads into basic zombies. I know that I'm technically using a glitch to beat this hidden minigame, but at this point I was just happy to finally move on. Next up is Big Time, a pretty easy minigame that doesn't really give us any downsides either. Instead, we get giant walnuts, sunflowers as well as marigolds, which in addition to having increased HP, also gives us extra sun and money. The level was so easy in fact that I was able to pull off a meme by using the Garling-P torchwood setup that I normally can't ever use because it never really worked in this environment. I used magnetrons again to deal with screener shields, jack-in-the-box, as well as football zombies, but other than that, there isn't too much to say either. Art Challenge Sunflower played out pretty much the same as Art Challenge Walnut, as well as Seeing Stars, just slightly harder since we're forced to bring useless umbrella leaves. Other than that, just as before, there isn't much to mention here. For air raid, I lifted my blower band from the adventure, and it instantly became by far the easiest level in this entire challenge. All you really have to do is spam blowers whenever necessary, and the only minor concern are the basic zombies that occasionally spawn throughout the level, but other than that, super easy. High gravity is an interesting one because its gimmick is that it drags down any straight shooting projectiles. However, since my Gloomshroom garlic setup doesn't rely on any straight shooters, and Gloomshroom themselves aren't affected by the high gravity at all, that made this minigame super easy as well. The same can be said for Grave Danger, where I used the same Gloomshroom garlic formation. The gimmick here is that random gravestones and zombies popping out of them spawn throughout the level, but luckily by using Gravebusters, it lets us basically ignore the entire gimmick. Dark Stormy Night thankfully gave us a different plant selection compared to the adventure version, meaning we now have access to cherry bombs. Just like before, I removed the actual fog from the minigame so it wouldn't affect the video, and since I'm not beating it legit anyways with seed manipulation. This level was surprisingly tough though, mainly because of the conehead zombies, since they're easily able to outtrain our cherry bombs. And to end this video off, we're playing Bungee Blitz, which seems to be identical to its adventure counterpart, with the exception that we now have to survive 3 instead of 2 flags. And there you have it. Hopefully this makes up for the last 12x minigames video that never got released. As you can see, most of these minigames simply weren't designed for this challenge, so as a result, some of them practically impossible, so I definitely wouldn't recommend anyone to ever try this at home. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more content like this, consider leaving a like or to subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. A huge thank you to my YouTube channel members who supported our channel for so long. And of course, to everyone who made it to the very end of this video. I wish you all an amazing day, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.